All right, welcome. You're in for the best panel of the day, so whoever's here made a great decision coming here. We have an esteemed group. What we're going to talk about is actually, it says building better apps, but we're going to talk about building better enterprise apps. Is that enterprise a dirty word here? Is that okay to say? Okay, cool. So what I want to do here, we're going to start, obviously shared security has become a very hot concept in the Web3 native world. So let's start talking about how it applies to enterprise. So we'll go down the line here. I'm going to pick on people. We'll probably change the questions. But why don't we start? Of course, I got to pick on you, Herc. Yeah, how do you see shared security? What's the relevance of shared security to enterprise applications?
Great. So first of all, we're K3 Labs. K3 Labs is an abstraction layer, which is effectively the Zapier for Web3. So an easy-to-use tool to basically configure Web3 services, work with Web3 platforms and protocols without actually having to understand how Web3 works. So you don't have to actually know how Solidity works. You don't have to know how these nodes works and wallets and all the rest of it. You can connect your Web2 world systems directly into the Web3 systems with a drag-and-drop type Zapier interface. So the reason why we built that is because actually David and I have spent a lot of time together over the years trying to get enterprises excited about the Web3 world. And the answer has always been exactly the same, which is, this is really interesting, I want to play with it, but I can't really touch it. Like I can't touch crypto, I can't really play with all this other stuff, I don't really know how to do this, I can't go and hire a massive team of people to make this all happen. And therefore, they're just kind of stepping in little by little. To meet that demand, you cannot be spending $100 million on hardware. Like you can't, there's not $100 million to be earned on the other side with enterprise use cases. There is money there, but it's not hundreds of millions of dollars. So without shared security, you can't really set up a network. I know how much some of these most expensive networks exist all over the world. 50 nodes, 75 nodes, 100 nodes. These are massive expenses, outrageous amounts of money that's going into those networks, and the volumes will never honestly be there. And so what we're seeing in all of our design partners, our enterprises, they are working with us to set things up in the K3 system. We only have 30 operators on the EigenLayer network, but it costs us almost nothing. And so this is unbelievably huge competitive advantage. You can start onloading these use cases, which are still nascent, but because they're nascent, the volumes aren't massive, but because the costs aren't massive, it still works. The economics are there. And so that's why we're super excited about shared security and why we're happy to be here today.
Bharat, let me ask you, since you're still into the enterprise world, is this concept come up? Like, what do you see the applicability here? I mean, are people caring about this? Does this enable something you can do with enterprise applications you couldn't otherwise do?
So one thing which I would say, that building network is hard, as he said, right? So shared security, and if we're going towards more modular, right, way of building Web3 apps, right, then you have to have applicability of shared security. You don't have to build the network. You don't have to worry about the security. You don't have to worry about have a validator set, and you can focus on building an apps. You can focus on running those apps and then having much better use case. Like we just had a panel before us, they were talking about demand and supply, right? So supply is enough, right, in a shared security. The demand piece, I think, where enterprise can help in this ecosystem to map those users requirement, use cases to these new modular infrastructure which is coming up in Web3, right?
I mean, but how far are, actually, before I say how far are we out, I'll pick on Vanessa here too. Like, can you, I know you're involved with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance heavily, like, why do I care about shared security? Why wouldn't I just run an application like I'm running it now? I'm running something on chain and supply chain application. It's a private network. Why do I need this underlying security? Or how does it make my application better?
Yeah, so we've seen in the past 2 years a shift because, and I'm sorry, I lost my voice this morning. This is not my real voice.
I can testify to that.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of the companies, financial services, and enterprise experiment and set up private blockchains, right? And they tested the limit of that model, and they came to realize that it doesn't give them anything more than existing Web 2 applications or infrastructure. And now they're saying, okay, we need to go to open source, Web 3. Ethereum is the #1 choice for its security, right? And so there's a natural place to discuss shared security and ways for them to engage through that. But I don't think that that is the nature of the conversation that enterprises have. The nature of the conversation is, oh, what is Solana? What is Ethereum? What is an L2? And what are the trade-offs there? And then is it, what additional business is this going to bring me? So I think we're still a bit early in those conversations. And then I think security doesn't always mean the same thing in the enterprise world and sort of the open source blockchain world. And I'm sure you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you next, Bharat, since you're deep in this. How are these conversations going? Yeah.
So I think she's right. I think, to be honest, right, I know 5 or 6 banks, they've been trying it out. One of the largest clearing agency in US is trying it out to build their private network, right? They tried it out with different private protocols, right? We know very well. But I think they reached to a limit that why do I need to build it, right? Adoption is not there. I need to have validators and who will run our nodes for me, right? Kaleido is like stepped in like 2-3 years back. Okay, we will build the node for you. We will build the network for you, right? And for those kind of networks, but then again, it's very tough to run those networks, right? The challenge for enterprises is, end of the day, is I don't want to build a network. I want to focus more on how do I get more business, what it basically, my customer base is there, what it gives benefit to my customer base, right? And that's where they're focused on. I think it's the same model like you look into Salesforce.com, right? I don't want to go to the SaaS side, which Sriram and everyone talking about it. I think the best model to look into it is more like a Salesforce.com. How many people know, right, that the Force.com was the best thing happened to Salesforce.com before even they start building apps on it, right? So you need to have very strong substrate, right? Once you have that strong substrate, then you can do things on top of it. I think that's where the blockchain network is going. That's where the whole modularity concept is coming in. But I think the strong substrate, one, Ethereum is there to provide that substrate, but I think other assets are coming into it, right? So the union restaking, you can use any asset as to provide that security, right? Bitcoin, that before us, that Bitcoin BTC was here, right? People were talking about BTC could be a good asset. Why BTC only, right? You can use Solana, you can use BTC, you can use Ethereum, you can use Move, right? Move protocol, Aptos kind of an ecosystem too, right? To provide the shared security. So supply side is figured out, I think, in this ecosystem. The demand side, I think we need to figure out, yeah?
Yeah, and Herc, like, what in terms of like legal regulatory with enterprise customers leveraging something like shared security, like how is this going to look? Is it a series of permission validators like we were thinking about at Chainlink, or how does this actually come to pass?
So my lawyer won't let me answer the legal regulatory question.
Okay, this
But
is not legal regulatory advice.
I will respond to what Bharat just said, which is that, so the good news is that I think the demand is coming. And I think the problem with the demand is not that there hasn't been interest. In fact, I'm sure that you see it quite a bit. You must get I think every single Fortune 500 company in the United States has a head of blockchain as a title. I mean, they exist. They're spending millions of dollars trying to figure this all out, and I'm sure they're hiring lots of folks like yourselves to help them figure this out. So there's no question that the demand is real. The problem is that the products that are generally built by all of the people in our world are not speaking to that group. They're not set up in that way. They don't have SLAs. They're not focused and structured on the legal questions and making sure the jurisdictional issues are there. So whilst I will not comment specifically on jurisdictional issues, I will say that we are absolutely focused on that SLA problem. Like we know we provide an SLA. Everything we do is fiat-based. Anything that needs to happen on the back in order to compensate or to compensate node operators or to compensate and write to blockchains, that's all handled through through conversion that's done through the software. But I guess the point is that if we really want this audience, you have to speak that language. You can't just pretend that they're all going to start speaking yours, which is the #1 thing that drives me crazy. Whenever I go to any of these conferences, I usually tune out after about a day and a half because I just can't hear once more how someone's going to convince J.P. Morgan to stake their coin for them or something. I don't want to have that conversation. It's been years I've been hearing this. I can't handle that conversation anymore. So if it's not about worrying about getting the jurisdictional stuff to catch up to us, it's us just building things right now that work within the actual construct the way it is. There's no point in waiting. There's demand there. There's a way to do it, and we can do it. We can build it right now.
And I think that some of this is going to be use case focused because obviously security matters more if you're talking about the transfers of large amounts of value or if there's lots at stake. That's why you need the security. So Vanessa, like, where do you see is the entry point here from a use case perspective? So if it's going to start somewhere, or if there's going to be enterprise adoption of shared security at scale, what's the most likely place that's going to start? And that's coming to the two of you after this. So get your thinking caps on.
Yeah, so I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the product market fit for Ethereum and blockchain in general is financial services. This is just a big trading platform, and we're just working on making it more secure, more scalable, and more interoperable. And so I think financial services have been at the forefront of adoption and will continue to be. They have the largest budgets. They have probably the largest teams that understand the implications of the blockchain, and they're doing a lot of tokenization in private blockchains, right? So they're just continuing their siloed economic model, and I think that's the entry point. I think that's where obviously security matters the most because you are transferring a lot of value, and I think that those are the ones who are going to find the use case for adoption.
Bharat,
It's the biggest market.
Yeah, no, I think she's right. I would say I will differentiate between the financial banking and capital market and a payment side. So definitely, like from our perspective, we three key domains which will adopt blockchain in general, right? And before others will come into a line. Definitely the banking and capital market, especially capital market now after all that ratification of ETFs, right? And the second one is payment. We believe that pretty much, I think, if you look into Visa and MasterCard, their B2B payment gonna be on blockchain soon, right? Not B2C to begin with, but B2B. And also, I think the credit card companies could be a good KYC layer for Web3, right? The third industry, which also I think which will gonna adopt blockchain, is a supply chain, right? So those three areas are very critical for adoption, in my opinion.
Yeah, all three of them already, again, I'm going to go with this is already happening. There's tons of activity that's already happening in this space, and particularly in supply chain. It's probably the largest use case today. But I will say that, unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember what cloud adoption looked like, as I'm sure you might be as well. I don't mean to make any assumptions, but I think you and I were both probably trying to sell cloud solutions 20 years ago, and they did not move their HR system to the cloud on day one. There was an outrageous, I would never touch this. It went from I would never touch this to maybe I could get permission to this to I guess I could do this anonymously to I guess actually we can put some of the data out there now to there's not a single one of these companies that has their own data centers, right? So no one's suggesting that we're going to be putting outrageously important critical HR stuff into the Web3 world anytime soon. That's a process that probably took 15 years for the cloud. But they already have moving things. I mean, there's announcements every day about people moving things out. There's easy things you can outsource to Web3. In particular, it's outrageously less expensive than what they're doing today, and that's really going to catch people's attention at some point. They're going to realize, oh, I can outsource really basic activities to node operators who are sitting there doing nothing. That's not the right word. They're sitting there with excess hardware capacity.
Providing available network service.
Sorry, they're sitting there with excess network capacity, and they're willing effectively to rent that network capacity to me to basically monitor very specific things out in the real world, and like there's no reason to build that in house. It would cost millions of dollars to build the stuff in house versus costing, a very small fraction of that to use Web3 providers.
So let me ask a question on pricing. So with traditional shared security initiatives, the protocol pays the node operators rewards. How does this work in the enterprise space? Where are the economics going to come from to compensate node operators from servicing these workloads? Yeah, that's for you, yeah.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. Today, paying for compute is a very easy concept that exists in today. We're not inventing a new concept there. People are paying outrageous fees to GCP and AWS for compute, right? That scale looks like this. At first, you feel like it's not that bad. Next thing you know, you're spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on compute cycles. So, spending money for compute is a long-term issue. Now I'm saying you can spend a lot less money on compute because you don't need dedicated hardware necessarily. You don't need, and sometimes you might want that, but certain processes don't require dedicated hardware.
I get that, but who's paying for the security? Because there's no tokens to pay for the security, because that's what these node operators are used to getting paid in tokens for the security.
So what we're doing, our personal solution to that is that we're charging SaaS dollars, we're converting those dollars, and we're paying node operators on the back to basically, as real volumes.
So you're paying them in dollars.
And then we're paying in ETH, right, effectively. So we're effectively converting, in a way, the dollars that come in through our clients, we're paying node operators in the back end in ETH for their contribution. They're obviously just putting a small stake toward us because the reality is that our world doesn't require massive, it's not DeFi, it doesn't require massive security. So for a very small amount of security, you can basically generate compute for enterprises. And again, they're not going to push everything out there, but there are absolutely tasks, small tasks that are starting that you already heard about that they're pushing out to these networks.
Yeah, and you're going to see like platforms. It's a little bit further down the line that are just machine-to-machine payments and organizations. So that layer even can be abstracted away with AI. So I'm not that concerned about like who's the entity who's paying what. I think enterprises will have another middleman that will either manage everything for them or an AI agent that can do that.
How many years will it be before enterprises cumulatively have paid $10 million to EigenLayer node operators?
That's not far, that might even be this year, right? I mean, I don't think that might have already, well, I guess EigenLayer technically, EigenLayer specifically isn't live enough. That's a question for the EigenLayer team. When are they going to have slashing ready? But there's some technical issues that EigenLayer itself has to do to be ready for that. But I think what the reality is that those of us that are the AVSs here are begging. We already have the demand. We're waiting for them to finish those projects, and then we will be able to hit that mark almost instantaneously.
Okay, optimistic. What do you think?
So I think you're talking about how do we pay the node operator, right?
Well, yeah, I'm asking the fees generated through enterprise customers to shared security node operators.
I think it goes back to demand. That's one thing. But the second thing is also, right now they have a point system, right? My argument to EigenLayer team is all these AVS, those are coming in, they're coming up with the tokens, right?
Yeah.
Right? Why they need to come with the tokens, right? They can just use ETH.
We don't ask. Oh, you're asking this question? No, I'm just
No, I'm saying that ETH is there, right? And if EigenLayer is building on ETH, then you can convert those points, which you are building a point system, into fraction of ETH, right? And that could be a very good economy for enterprises, for the users, for the AVSs, everybody in the system, right? And ETH has enough economy to compensate right from the application to the node operator, to AVSs, and everybody, right? And it's all about how much attraction you want to generate in an ecosystem, right? Ultimately, if everybody goes back, that's how I think the whole point is when they talk about it, like 1 million or 1 billion stake moving to L2, then you lose that 1 billion stake on a L1. And eigenlayer argument is that we are bringing that billions dollar back to L1, right? So I think there's enough, if they don't generate a token and AVS won't go after the token TGEs of this kind of economy, then ETH becomes economy in that ecosystem, and then everybody will get compensated. I think there's enough liquidity as well as economies there to compensate everyone on the layers, right? In the layers.
All right, I won't tell you what I say because I'm not allowed to as the moderator. All right, we've got time for the David Post special ending here, the happy ending. So lightning round. Okay, when we come back for next year's ECC and we look at shared secure and enterprise, in 3 sentences or less, what will people be, 3 words or less, what will people be saying? All right, we're going to do a countdown. You don't need to, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Wow, I didn't know we could do this.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was her answer?
Lightning round.
I said, wow, I didn't know we could do this.
I think people are going to be genuinely surprised at how quickly it goes from
All
here.
right, so speed.
I think the modularity will gonna catch on, yeah.
Modularity on fire. All right, well, thank you to you. Thank you to all of you. And we'll see who's right when we're back here next year.